Okay, so I think I'll start. We give we gave the 2 minutes. First of all, I want to thank everyone who basically enrolled in this webinar. For us, it's very important to have you listen to this information, which is very, very important. As Chile, we have been working on a soft landing program called Go Global in last year. It was very successful. We have 12 companies here. Have now 4 of those companies, they set operation here in the US, which is really, really good rate for us. And also we have a really good, like a success case, which is Genosur, a company who is developing samplers for the COVID-19, and they're setting an operation here with a laboratory in Miami-Dade County. So really good news. So that shows that the program is working. What else? ProChile is very focused on using this city as the gateway for the rest of the US regarding innovation and entrepreneurship or startups. So with the help of people like Charlie, Tom, with their company based in Miami, we're trying to give you all the information that you may need in order to be prepared to enter the US market. Miami, even though it has a Latin component, it's very different than any other country in Latin America. This can be the capital of Latin America, but it's not Latin America. So that's good to understand when you're trying to land here. This is ruled by US business. And I think that's going to be one of the main subjects that Tom and Charlie will be tackling this evening. So I think you have a really good opportunity to understand a little bit better of the market, how it behaves, and I think that's why we're trying to present you guys with this review of the market. So I will pass this session to Charlie, so he can start the webinar. And if you have any, please write it down on the chat, and we will reply those at the end of the presentation. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Germán, and well, thank you, ProChile, for the opportunity of us presenting today to this super cool audience that we have. I'll introduce us afterwards. I wanted to first tell you what we're going to be doing. It's actually a 2-session workshop. This is the first one, and then we have another one on May 12th. The reason we call it workshop is because we want to make it a little bit interactive, and we want you to not only participate, but to actually work out of this after this presentation that we're going to do, because the idea is for you to take on tools in order for you to make your entry to the US easier, or at least to learn more about how to enter the US market. So the 2 sessions are going to be today. We're going to be talking about the 7 deadly sins of market entry. And on May 12th, which is our next webinar, we're going to be talking about how to get ready for market entry. And so let me tell you a little bit about us. So we decided that we're going to have this webinar in English because as we're talking about the US market, that was the plan. If anybody, and the chat is open here, so you can put anything that you want there. Actually, one thing that I wanted to ask you is if you could just introduce yourself very briefly, putting your name, your company name, and say a brief, we call it elevator pitch. I don't know if you know what that is, but I guess you do. It's just a 1 or 2 sentences of what your company does, so that we can know who's on the other side, and that we can start interacting between each other. Also on the chat, you're open to put any questions that you may have. We will try to address them all at the end so that we don't stop the presentation with the questions. But at the end of the presentation, we can answer anything that you wrote even during the presentation. And I wanted to know if you can on the chat, if everybody is okay and everybody understands English very well, because the presentation was going to be in English. We could swap it to Spanish. It could be challenging because all the notes are in English, but we can try to do that. So if anybody does not speak English, let me know, and we'll see if we need to do something different. If not, I'll continue. So okay, so that's Fernando. Oh, see here, Fernando is already saying he's actually my partner. I'm going to talk about him. Sophia is also putting her info there, and Alexandra from Cloudwork. Great. Thank you guys for doing that. Okay, so introducing us, who we are, based Miami, that's our company, and essentially what we do is we support technology companies from different parts of the world with their landing and their growth in the US market. That's the gist of what we do. We try to accelerate and help companies learn much faster than they would learn on their own. And in terms of our team, myself, Charlie, Snell, who's that guy on the left there. And I'll tell you a quick background on me. I had several years in the corporate world at a company called Assist Card. I don't know if you know it because it's pretty well known in Latin America. I worked in different areas as a country manager, and then I brought the operation to the US. So that was my first, let's say, learning curve of moving a Latin company to the US market. And after 3 years of doing that, I jumped to the entrepreneurial world and I fell in love with it. I love technology. I love entrepreneurs and the startup ecosystems in general. And I found in Miami to have a thriving startup ecosystem. This was in 2014 that I did that. And I founded a company called Laglock, which was a tracking technology company. Which we grew for 3 years, and we took it to about $3 million in revenue. I did 2 accelerator programs in that process, one in Miami, one in San Francisco. So I learned how, startups went from not knowing what they were doing to learning very quickly how to go to market. And I really learned how to go to market in the US with, our team was mainly in Argentina. So I also learned how to grow a startup from Latin America in the US market, mainly through partnerships. We did partnerships with Samsonite, Delcy, and other big players. Distribution as well. We put the product in Bed Bath & Beyond and other retail stores. And then e-commerce with PR, we were mentioned in CNN, NBC. So we got a lot of exposure, which grew our e-commerce. So I learned a lot of different tools there. And then I decided that I wanted to help other startups with their US market entry. And soon after that, I met Fernando, who's on the line. Hi, Fernando. I don't know if you can, I think I muted you because I don't want you to talk because you talk too much.
I'm here, oh, Charlie, don't worry.
Okay. Well, Fernando, he's been doing this for much longer than me. He's been helping, and I'll talk for you if you want, or you want to talk.
Just the same. I can talk for myself. Don't worry. Okay. I was born in Brazil. I left Brazil in 1991. I work in 5 different countries around the world, and I came to US 1999. In 2001, we did a project that was developed in Brazil and sold here. We found that it was a good idea. 2004, I started my consulting business, helping in the beginning Brazilian companies to come here. For the ones that are in the IT market, there is a brand called Brazil IT that's on several events that people from Chile come around the world and see us. I'm a co-founder of this brand to support Brazilian business outside Brazil, only technology, of course. And in 2008, we create an incubator concept. It's been incubating companies in our office. We right now have 35 companies co-share our space. And last year I met Charlie, and we're just doing the same thing with the same ideas, and we hit it off. So we may put together a base Miami. So just join the efforts to facilitate how you do business in the United States.
Thank you, Phil. Great. And then after, I think it was after 6 months of launching Base Miami, we met our third partner, who's Jeff Snyder. He's not in the call today, but I'll tell you about him very briefly. He's a New Yorker originally, went to Denmark and started a voice over IP company there. He took it to Silicon Valley in 1998. So he's an old timer from the Valley, and he sold it to Ericsson. Then he started another company and he sold it to Avaya. And then after that, he said, well, I just want to help other startups. And he started helping founders mainly with fundraising. So he raised over $50 million in venture capital money in Silicon Valley. And for the past 10 years, he was helping with the same concept of market entry for companies from Southeast Asia, from Europe. And he moved to Miami 2 years ago, and we met, and he said, like, well, I'm doing the same as you guys, so why don't we all do it together? So that's kind of how we all three got together, and we are the founders of Base Miami. And then we have Tom, who's, I think he was also here on the call. And Tom is our head of marketing, amongst others. You know how it is. We're also a small team. We have Pilar as well, that she's not, her picture is not there, but she's part of the team as well. And we cover a lot of different hats in the company, but all of it for supporting the startups in whatever they need. And you know, startups or tech companies moving to the US, they usually need a lot of different things, and that's where we divide and conquer between the team. So well, that's the team. And essentially what we do is, as I said before, we accelerate the learning curves of companies that are entering the US market, and we do it through different programs that we have, and that we'll be happy to share more after this presentation if you want. As I was saying, I'll repeat this before I start, that we're gonna try to make this interactive. As it's a bunch of us, there were about, I think there were going to be about 30 companies, maybe 15, maybe 20 anyways, but it's a lot. So we don't want to open the floor for everybody to ask questions all the time. But yes, you have the chat so that you can write there. And if you don't know how to use the chat, then I don't know either. So, but actually, I think that you go there to the bottom and it says chat there. You should see, and I'll send a note to see chat here to see if you can. Oh no, I sent it to Jaime now. So anyway, so you can share messages there and ask questions there, and at the end of the presentation, we will address those questions. Also, if you can now, if you haven't done that yet, if you can please put your name, company, and what your company does very briefly. Sorry, name, position, name, company, position, and what your company does, sort of an elevator pitch there, so that we can know, well, we all know who we're talking with and who's part of this. And again, for you guys that join later, I'm going to say that this is our first workshop. We have a second one coming up on May 12th. And both of them are tailored towards companies that are interested in looking at the US market as a possibility, and specifically Miami as kind of a beachhead or their landing space. Anyway, so let me go with the presentation now. If you're just seeing this, the presentation screen, right? You're not seeing the chat and the participants or anything like that on the screen, no? Who can help me there? Fernando, maybe? Or...
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes. Okay, so honestly, like in the last, between the and part, I always talk about our team, not about only my own experience, but our team's experience. So in all these years that we've been working with a lot of different entrepreneurs, and most of them, I would say, have this superhero attitude, right? Like, as in, I can conquer the world, and I'm amazing, and I'm gonna, wherever I go, I'll triumph. Which is a great attitude to have, and it is very important to have that attitude in order to have success. You have to be resilient as an entrepreneur. You have to learn how to run through obstacles and also keep your focus on your goal. But it is also true that it's not realistic. I mean, not everybody is a superhero, and superheroes need a lot of other support as well in order to succeed. So we've seen throughout the years that a lot of these companies that go to the US, they make the same mistakes, and that's how we compile this presentation called the 7 Deadly Sins of Market Entry. And we'll start with talking about the ingredients that tech companies need, we call it the nourishment that they need in order to thrive and to grow. And we see that this is divided in 3 areas, really. One is the market. So ideally, as a tech company, you want one big market. You don't want 10 different small markets. You want one big market, ideally, with one stable currency, with one regulatory framework, and with one language, right? I mean, that makes everything that we do much easier. So that's one of the ingredients that we see as key to success. Another one is talent, and we're not only talking technical talent, but also entrepreneurial talent and talent of people that know how to grow companies and how to make companies successful. And then the third part is the capital, and that's high risk venture capital. So these three components are what are the key ingredients for success for technology companies. And in Latin America and in Chile in particular, we know that there's great engineering talent. There's also true that the cost is much lower for the talent, so that's a great advantage. But there's not enough of a market. The market is not big enough to thrive as an organization if you want to conquer the world, let's say. And we see that there, when you look at, okay, what to do? Okay, I'm already big in Chile. I already did what I had to do here. So what's the next step? And we see that the US is a perfect, next step and a perfect market to address. It's huge. It has a lot of complications, and we're going to go through them. But it is also a great place to go because of its geographical, proximity and because of the sheer size of the market. And we'll talk about that now. And specifically Miami, we see it as a great beachhead and as a great place for LATAM companies to land because of the cultural affinity, because of the kind of the companies and the market is used to dealing with Latin America. So it's the barriers of entry are much lower than in any other city or ecosystem in the US. And talking about the US in particular, why are these three ingredients big in the US? Well, first, the market, the US is a $20 trillion GDP. So that's a big market. It's also the currency is super stable. The dollar is the dollar. The laws, the regulatory framework also doesn't change depending on who's in power. A new government came in, so the whole country's laws and rules change. That doesn't happen in the US. So all of this allows for you to be able to do long-term strategy and planning, which sometimes in Latin America and in Chile even, although Chile has a very stable economy and government luckily, but it's still, sometimes it's hard to plan 5 to 10 years ahead. And that's what the US has to offer. Also, in terms of talent, well, I mean, most of the most successful entrepreneurs, and especially in what is technology and growth, early stage growth companies, they are in the US, the brains for helping other companies grow. And when you're thinking about creating or building your board of advisors, your board of directors, or you want to bring investors to your company, well, the US has a lot of really good, solid talent in that area. And the capital, well, no doubt, the US, the venture capital in the US investment for 2019 was $130 billion, while if you put all that time together, it was $3 billion. So definitely the capital is in the US. I mean, summarizing all this, it's like, okay, so then if you have all these super cool things in the US, you have capital, you have talent, you have the market, so then what can go wrong, right? And the short answer that we have is that everything can go wrong. We've seen it a lot of times that companies and founders, they spend 1 or 2 years in the US kind of trying to figure out the market. They're not finding the right space. The time passes, the money starts running out because it's also an expensive market to be in. And they end up learning the hard way that there's a big difference between selling at home and selling in the US. And one of the main reasons is because you don't have we call it the home court advantage. Like in your country, you know your market, you know your industry, you have your network, you know the players, you know the culture, you know how to move. Well, when you go to the US, all the other companies and your competitors are the ones that have all these benefits, right? So that's why that learning curve takes time, and a lot of the companies and entrepreneurs they're just going for it. They just they want to start running without maybe stopping and thinking. And these are the 7 mistakes that we see repeatedly happening in different cases with companies and entrepreneurs. And one is talking about the focus and the field of focus. That and think about this. I mean, okay, maybe you have a decent market share in Chile, and or in other countries in Latin America. Well, and you're saying like, well, I have a good market share, so I know how to gain market share. If you think about the market in the US, South Florida alone, so only the southern part of Florida has the same GDP as the whole of Chile, right? So, and by this, what I mean is that the market is immensely bigger in the US. And so, you know, when you're in Latin America, when you're in a smaller economy, in a smaller market, then in order for you to grow and to get more revenue and to be bigger, you need to diversify. You need to, you know, sell to a lot of different companies and different verticals. And we call it like, you know, you sell everything to everyone. That's how you do, because that's how you can survive, right? So you have usually multiple verticals, you have multiple use cases, you have multiple product categories. And this really in the US, it's a losing approach. The US is a super competitive market. And this competition forces you to be specialized. You know, you have to like really narrow down your customer segments, define very specific offerings for a very specific target audience. We always tell our clients, you know, okay, you have to choose. And if you have several offerings, you have to choose one product, one offer, and one client. Once you have that, you have one product, one offer, one client, then you build expertise around that. And then you may have a chance in the market. You know, and this is one that I stole from Fernando, that he always says that the US it's a huge wall that you have to break. Well, in order to break it, you have to get a very small needle and start like making a very small hole in that wall. You cannot go and try to break the whole wall down, because it's not going to work. And we have some examples of this. For example, we had a cloud platform that did customer testimonials. And when we were talking about their ideal customer profile, they would say, well, it's everyone. It's pretty much everyone. Any company of a certain size that has a marketing team, because anybody can benefit from testimonials, right? So they were calling their solution a horizontal solution. So it's for everybody. Then we had another one that was a customer journey software platform. And they enter the US market with multiple use cases, multiple verticals, because the customer journey was also horizontal. Well, in both cases, they struggled a lot to get to repeatable sales. And I wanted to finish this one with a story that Jeff told me that I really liked, and I kept, and I stole it from him. That is that when he was talking to an investor, and the investor told him, you know what, Jeff, sometimes, or most of the time, 50 times 1 is very different than 1 times 50. And you're like, what do you mean? It's the same, 50 times 1, 1 times 50, but not really. So having one client in 50 different industries is much less valuable than having 50 clients in one industry. And why is that? It's because really when you have 50 clients in one industry, you have proven that you found a repeatable sales process. You know how to acquire more and more clients by repeating a method. And that's really the key. I mean, that's where you want to get as a tech company starting in the US market. So that's one. Then the second one, the second problem that we see, or the second sin that we see that companies make, is that there's a customer problem fit, you know, and this means that the problem that you're solving in your home country usually either it doesn't exist in the US or it varies greatly. And we know that you have a defined value proposition in your country, and that you're like, okay, you know what, I found this problem and I'm solving it, and I'm great at solving it, so I want to take this solution to the US. Well, the US market is much more advanced usually in solving those problems from a technology standpoint or from a market sophistication standpoint. So the product or service that you have might not be a pain point in the US. Maybe it's not a problem for the US clients. And here we always like to address these things with examples. And give me one second, I'm gonna take some water because I'm talking too much. Well, one example that is it's pretty well known is Halo. Halo is a UK company that essentially what they do is match taxi drivers with passengers through an app. And they said, okay, you know what, let's go to the US, New York, there's a whole bunch of taxis, so we can make it there. So they raised $30 million and they went to New York and they started marketing their company. What happened? That in New York, people just go out and put their hands out and stop their taxis. So taxi drivers really did not need to download an app in order to get passengers. So they didn't get any adoption from the taxi driver. So they weren't solving a problem for the taxi driver. And the passengers, again, they're used to just putting their hands out and getting a taxi. Or now they had Uber in the way. So Uber was getting prices, half of the fare of a regular taxi. So they really didn't have one or the other model. So after $30 million and 3 years in the market, they had to go. And another example that we have is a company that we know from the Nordic market. They had a scheduling optimizer for home health agencies. So this is, home health agencies are the ones that send caregivers to your house so they can take care of you if you're sick. And this software, what it did is that it allowed for effective matchmaking between the caregivers and the patients. Very quickly, they saw that was not a problem in the US, that the problem that in the US was finding the caregivers, that there was not enough caregivers to support the demand. So agencies were more worried of losing their staff and contractors to other agencies than the scheduling issue, which was not a problem. So the company, before coming into the US, they had to pivot their model and think of other ways of tackling either the same problem in a different target audience or a different problem within the same space. So that's some of the customer problem fits that we've seen. In the competition space, so also this is another thing of the superhero dilemma that we call. There's a lot of founders that think that their company is unique, that they're solving a problem that nobody else is solving, and that that they are the only ones that can solve this. 99% of the time that's not right. That especially in the U.S. market, the U.S. market is super competitive. Whenever somebody sees a problem, it's also an entrepreneurial market. So whenever there's a problem that is not being solved, there's somebody working on a solution usually. And here it's important that you focus not only on the big players, because everybody, we talk to a lot of tech companies and they're like, oh yeah, our competitor is Salesforce and Avaya or Oracle or Marketo, and it's not only them. I mean, yes, they might be your competitor, but really you want to go compete against Salesforce or Oracle, like they have billions of dollars in marketing investment, and usually they are not your competitor. Your competitor is usually another startup in the US that is doing something very similar to what you're doing, that already has a US presence, that already has a US network, that already has US funding. So you need to understand the competitive landscape very deeply to find where you can fit, because again, you think that your competitor is Salesforce, but your competitor is probably a CRM out of Boston that just raised $30 million for expanding their market presence. And that's something that you need to know right away. And then another thing that we say here on the competition side is that you have to try to dominate and not ruminate, as we call it. So, I mean, most companies are they're saying, oh, think big and grow. And like, okay, what's the big market that you want to go after? And then all the pitches that we see, that it's like, oh, well, we want to get 1% of this huge market. And that's also something it's very utopical, let's say, and doesn't have a lot of validity. So we always recommend it's better for you to say, I want to get 70% of this very, very small market, but I want to be the best and the biggest player in that market. So I want 70% of market share. And maybe market share is, I don't know, I want to be the best software provider for dentists that are between the ages of 40 to 60, but I'll get 70% of those. That's kind of what we call by dominate and don't ruminate. And think about, I mean, not to go to big companies, but yeah, like Facebook, for example. They started with Harvard. Let's do a social media for Harvard, and then okay, let's do it for the Ivy League colleges, and now they do it for other schools, and then and then it's Facebook, right? So yeah, take into account that when you're thinking about your competition and who really is your competition. In sales model and distribution, this is a big one. Also, we see a lot of similar mistakes here because founders and companies are like, okay, I have a great product. I'm the only one that is doing this. I have no competition. So I'm gonna find somebody that will fall in love with my product as much as I am in love with it, and they're gonna sell it for me in the US. And this is what we call by finding a partner. So, I'll partner my way through sales. And yeah, that doesn't work. Or again, every time we say it doesn't work, it's for us what we've seen the most amount of times. Maybe sometimes it works, but it's a very small amount of times that it does. So it's, it's like, or another one is like, yes, I have my cousin that has a friend that is going to be selling my product on commission basis. Okay, that's also not a good idea. So, and even, or you want to go to a local established player, like, I found a channel partner and I'm going to say, please, can you sell my product? This, again, almost never works, at least not in the beginning. We always think that you as a founder, or you as the executive team, or your core company talent that knows your company very well and your product, you have to go and you have to figure out this market by yourself. You have to learn how to sell your product in the US by yourself. You cannot trust this on other people, and that only once you as a founder, again, have cracked the code and that you understand how to sell to the market, only then you can start looking for external support to sell. You can't really recruit partners to figure out the market for you, because partners, sales teams, commission-based people, etc., they sell things or products or services that are already selling. They're not people that are going to go out there and figure out the market for you. That's your job. You need to plan and also fundraise for that to be able to spend that time figuring out the market. So that's on sales model and distribution, and this is on ecosystem adaptation. Again, in many industries, the ecosystems vary greatly between the US market and the local market. As an example, for example, we have healthcare in the US, which is a highly complex ecosystem. In the US, it's comprised of healthcare providers, insurance companies, the federal government, the state government, the local government, the patients, the businesses, etc. So it's very different from many countries, and the difference will affect from how you distribute a product, how the regulatory aspects influence your business. So these are all aspects that you need to take into account when you're looking at the industry that you're going after. And the same happens with other industries. It's very important to study and get to understand their value chains and each ecosystem player, who does what and where you fit in. And that's something that we'll work a little bit on the next workshop on how to enter the US market, because it's really about market validation and market knowledge. And as an example, we were working with a company that offered a customer experience management solution, right? It was a platform, and their home market in their country was insurance. Insurance companies that had a call center. So this customer experience management platform would sit between the call center and the insurance company, and they will make that experience much better and more efficient for the insurance company. So great. So they said, okay, now let's go to the US and do the same. Well, they noticed that they couldn't do it here. Why? Because the industry ecosystem in the US was completely different from what their product was in their local market. Like in the US, so in their local market, every customer interaction occurred directly with the insurance company and through the company's call center. While in the US, there's a lot of middlemen between the insurance companies and the customers, and those are called the brokers, right? And companies have hundreds of brokers all over the nation. So this software was not ready to work with brokers, with a myriad of different brokers. It was made for working with large insurance companies. So they really couldn't adapt to the need. There was no need for what they were offering here. And so that was really a fundamental difference in the ecosystem, if you think about it. So that's how they disqualified the insurance company and said, okay, no, we cannot go after that industry, as a target, but we can refocus on the banking industry, for example. And that's something that we do also with our companies. Whenever possible, we advise clients not to change the target, but not to change the product, but to change the target. So to go after a different vertical, maybe where your solution will fit in better than going to change your whole product, because that's a much harder endeavor. Next is capital. So another very challenging one. A lot of companies that we work with, and we work with a lot of companies from Latin America, from Chile, from Argentina, from Brazil, and they most of them want to go to the US with a goal of getting funded at some point, right? And they're like, okay, I'm going to go to the US to do my Series A, or I'm going to go get my seed money in the US. That doesn't work. US investors invest in US companies, and you have to reach some serious milestones before they even consider investing in you. So you really have to focus on getting funded locally before you're ready for your US expansion. You need to have cash and money for supporting your US expansion. Most international companies that come to Miami and to the US have less money than their US competitors. So you need to work on funding if you want to take any kind of market share from these other competitors that are well funded, right? And in the US, it will take at least, we say, between 18 to 24 months for you to be able to reach the milestones that are required by US investors in order for them to put money in your company. So we always recommend our companies that, raise money in your home country or get funding for at least for the first 2 years of your operation in the US before you go to the US to say, okay, I'm going to go there and get money. So that's for capital. And now let's talk team. So team is, as we said before, it's very hard to, or almost impossible to outsource the job of figuring out a sales model that is repeatable and that is scalable, right, in the US. Sorry, I ran out of saliva, I think. So it will usually take 1 or 2 founders to be in the US market in order to figure out the market before you can hire a sales guy or work with channel partners. Because as we said before, they both, channel partners, sales guys, etc., they work with already defined strategies and sales models. It's very hard for them to actually figure out a sales model. And this, it happened to a lot of companies, that they don't spend the time working on figuring out the market, and then they just go out and hire, and especially if they're funded from Latin America or other parts of the world, they come with money and they're like, okay, I'm going to hire a VP of sales that used to work for Salesforce, so he has a Rolodex of contacts, and yeah, he's going to do a great job and bring me clients. And then what does the VP of sales do? He comes and he's like, okay, I need to hire a sales team in order for us to to grow. So he goes out and hires a sales team, and then they start selling, but they are selling a product that nobody really needed, or that they didn't know how to sell it and to whom, and they start burning through cash. So really, you can recruit the team before you figure out the game. That's how we call it, and that's a very expensive mistake. And we say like it's 6 steps that you have to go before you can hire an international team or a sales team in the US. And one is what we talked before, it's figure out one ideal client profile. So one vertical, one client profile. Then also focus on one use case for that client profile. So one client profile, one use case. Then prove that client profile is willing to pay for your product or service. And then what is, figure out the best way to find and sell repeatedly to that one ICP, to that one demographic. Once you have all of that in place, then you can hire 1 or 2 external sales guys that are a good fit for that specific sales model, so that they know the demographic, they know the industry dynamics, they know the business problem. And only when you've done all of that kind of step by step, then you can hire, additional salespeople to grow and to scale. So kind of the lesson, or what we want you to remember here, is figure out the game and then hire the players. Don't do it the other way around, because it doesn't really work. Okay, so all this sounds, I guess it sounds challenging and it sounds like tough. So it's like, okay, so then how, what does work? Because all of this doesn't work. Well, we have to be realistic also. I mean, there's no secret formula. It's not like, oh yeah, well, if you do this, then we guarantee that you will succeed. The US is the most competitive market in the world. Everybody wants to go into the US and sell. There's already a lot of players in the industry, in the market. So you do have to master it in order to have chances in the market. So again, there's no secret formula, but most of the companies that we've seen succeed, they follow this kind of 3-step process. And why? Because in each part of the process, you answer fundamental questions that needed to be answered, and you reduce or eliminate a lot of the risks that are involved in that process. And the first part is what we call the market readiness. Here is where companies get the initial exposure to the market, and you start building your network. You start to gain insights in the industry. You start to prepare your market entry strategy by engaging really with the market itself, with the ecosystem itself. So you engage with potential clients, with partners, with industry experts and insiders, and you learn about the market and how your company can fit in that market. And if this, if you do it right, then you're going to invest much less time and money than hiring people or putting people on the ground and start running before you get to understand where you are and what you're doing. So at the end of this first phase that we call the company will have validated that that the problem that I have, the problem that I'm solving and the solution that I have is the same, or that I'm ready to tackle it in the US market. So you validate that there's a market for your product service. And then the second one is that you prepare your story, your collaterals, your legal structure, and also your go-to-market strategy, so that you can start going to the next phase, which is sales, right? The second step then is repeatable sales. And this is, I would say, is the most challenging thing that exists out there, because really a repeatable sales model is where you have figured out how to create a happy customer through a consistent, repeatable, methodical, and profitable, and even scalable sales process. So a lot of things there. But essentially it's like, okay, how do I already nailed getting 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients using this formula. Okay, can I repeat that formula and scale it? And once you get to that, then you've made it essentially. That unfortunately, the reality is that most companies never get there. That's the truth. When it comes to sales channel in particular, most entrepreneurs and most companies think that more is more. The more people I can sell to, the more market I can go after, then the better it is. But the reality, what we've seen and what we think is that less is more. The most successful companies really get sales from one single sales channel than the sum of all the other channels out there. And a lot of companies sadly continue to invest in a multiple amount of channels in parallel until they run out of cash. And we call that the throw stuff on the wall strategy. Like, okay, let's just, throw things everywhere and maybe we'll stick it somewhere. That is just a way to burn cash. So you're spending money and you're also wearing down because you're not learning, you're not progressing, you're not like, kind of reaching different milestones with a structured approach. It's just kind of random sales that you're going to get there. So, in our experience, the only way to get there is through really method, like, defining sales models that are systematic, methodical, and then trial and error, trial and error until you get to that repeatable sales model. And then the last step is funding and scale. So once you get to this repeatable and scalable sales model with your company is growing, you have retention so that your metrics are great over a period of time, then investment is super easy. You can go to an investor and like, look, we've been growing 20% month over month. So if you give me $1 million, you're going to make 5 million in 3 years. Okay, that's a compelling story that you can sell to an investor. But before you have to get to those metrics that are required for you to be at that stage. So, and we think that this whole process that we just described, from market readiness to funding and scale, it will take about 24 months. And depending, of course, on your industry and on your company, it will also mean $250,000 investment at least, I would say. That's what we've seen, at least with companies. So that's really the whole process that we know that works. And why this works is because it's a step-by-step journey that really systematically de-risks each step of the journey before you go to the next. So and each step that you go to the next, you have to invest money, right? And time, and money and time. So the first phase, for example, that we talked about, market readiness, you don't even need to be in the US. You can do it from home. So you don't have people on the ground there. You don't have immigration lawyers. You don't have recruiters. You don't have staff to support or anything like that. So it's an easy entry point. The second one, it just requires one founder maybe to figure it out and to accelerate that sales model. But you don't need, again, a sales team or a huge marketing investment or anything like that. So in the model that we showed before, companies move from one phase to the next until you don't move from one space to the next until you really have hard evidence that is showing you that you're ready for that next stage, right? So instead of putting money and scaling prematurely, you scale when you have proven that you are in the right space and that you've done what you needed to do in order to get there. So it's just a way of saving time and money in your market growth. So that's about all that we had in the presentation. We do have something that we wanted to leave you with, and this is, we're going to be sending this in a survey format, because we would love to hear from each one of you. And so our team, the team from ProChile, is going to send you a survey that you can complete with these 5 topics, I would say, that we have for really evaluating what's your market readiness for going to the US market. And then we talk about the customer and product readiness, the financial readiness, the team and investor alignment, if you have that beginner's mindset, because it's super important also to understand that even if you're huge and you're the #1 in your country, when you go to the US, you are a startup and you have to start from scratch. And then also if the business and the the team and etc. is movable to the US. So we're going to be sending this survey again for you to fill in. Then we as a team, Base Miami, is going to be reviewing each one of the responses, and we're going to come back to you with what we see as your percentage of market readiness or of company readiness to go to the US market. And that's just a way for you to gauge if you're in the right space, and we'll also recommend what to focus on as things that you need to work on in order to be there. That's our presentation, and let me see. That's my contact info. If you want to send me an email or call me or add me to WhatsApp, you can do that. The idea now is to open the floor for questions that you may have. You can, if you want to put them there in the chat, or I can also unmute everybody and we can have a little conversation maybe. And let me see how much time has gone by, and let me stop sharing here. Okay. And I'll ask first our friends from ProChile if you wanted to close or you wanted to say something, Germán or Jaime.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I forgot to introduce Sophia Del Sante. She's the head of innovation of ProChile. She was on the call. I didn't know that. So sorry, Sophia, for that. So if you want to jump in and introduce yourself and say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Germán, and no worries about forgetting about me. I came late because I was in another call. So first of all, I think I want to thank Charlie, Tom, and Fernando for the time that you took today in order to support the Chilean companies, get a better overview of what it takes to open their companies in the US. So first of all, thank you for that. And I wanna encourage everyone maybe to do more questions to see if there's something that you need to learn in order to open your company in the US. This is the time to do it. It's not that every day we have experts with us that knows specific things about the market. And I think once you wanna go to open your company in a new market, it's very important to first understand what it takes to enter that market. So in that sense, I would open the opportunity maybe for a few questions from the audience, and want to thank you guys, and we hope we can do more of these initiatives with Base Miami, because I think it's very crucial for Chilean entrepreneurs to find a good partner for them in the local market that can help them enter this market, understanding all that it takes and the cultural aspects, and also of course regulation, legal aspects that are crucial, not to waste time trying to take your company to a new country.
Thank you, Sophia. Actually, there is one question here already in the chat, and if you guys want to put the questions on the chat, that would be great, and we'll try to answer with what we know. I see here that Michelangelo was sending a question about 0.4 sales model and distribution. How can you do it for the wine industry that has a lot of barriers, 3-tier system, and it's mandatory to have an importer and or a distributor to the US? You cannot figure it out by yourself, so you need to find someone to sell for you. What can you advise to find the right fit distributor? Okay, so just first of all, honestly, our specialization is on technology companies, so that's because both, Fernando, Jeff, and myself have worked all of our lives with technology companies, so I don't have an experience in the wine industry. What I can tell you though is that it's the same concept, meaning let's say that you need a local distributor that is somebody that needs to sign or legally be the person that will distribute your product. Well, I would suggest in that case to do again what we call the market readiness, and it's going to the industries, going to the different experts in the space, and learning what are the best practices, what is different from your product and from others, and maybe being able to create some unique way of differentiating yourself in the market. And then once you have that figured out, once you know, I want to sell only to how can I say, organic supermarkets because my product is organic and has this and this differential. So I want to create the brand around that organic special thing, and then I want to market exclusively to those supermarkets. Okay, that now you have kind of and of course you have to go and validate this, talk to the supermarkets, to the buyers to see if there's a space for you there. And once you have all of that done, then you go talk to the distributor or to the sales guy or to whoever it is that has to distribute your product and say, look, this is my package, this is my brand, this is how we sell, this is how you pitch, here it is, now you go sell it for me. But having a guy in the industry do that for you, I see it as challenging, whether it's in technology or in any market, really. So hope that answers the question, Michelangelo. Next one. Next one is Angelica is saying, so the best thing is to go yourself to sell your product. Well, yes and no. I mean, I'm not trying to sell our services, but I have to. Like, you can work with people like us or others, local advisors, local mentors, so people that understand the market, that have been through what you want to go through. But it's really, nobody's going to be able to figure things out for you. And what I mean is, for example, Base Miami, there's a lot of soft landing consulting companies or consultants in general that it's like, oh, you tell me what you do, and I'll go out and do a research, and I'll come back with a PowerPoint, and I'm going to tell you, oh well, what you should do is A, B, C, D, and then that's it. And now you have what you need to do. We don't believe in that. We believe that the only way that you can crack the code in this market is by you learning by doing. And yes, you can support yourself with people like us that we've done it before. We have methodologies, we have systems in place, we have a team that will support you in that learning. And we have also, again, like the methodology of how to get to that learning curve faster, but it's you that has to go through it, and we will help you, we'll give you the tools like this. For example, this is a workshop that we did where we give you the tools. At the end, we're gonna ask you all these questions, but we need you to make those, to give us those answers, and then work on the actions that you need to perform. And next workshop, we'll do a little bit more. We'll give you other tools that you need to do. But what we mean is that you cannot just say, okay, you know what, I'm going to hire a representative, or I'm going to have my cousin that has a friend in Miami and she's going to start go out and selling to different, that really doesn't work. So you have to figure it out yourself before you go to other people to do it for you. Next, Martin is saying there is absolutely no option to find investors in USA. Okay, that's a good question. There's a bunch of investors in the USA, a lot of them, and you can find them, and you can probably talk to a lot of them as well. Miami has a very decent investor pool and organized between angel groups, also venture capital firms that are in South Florida as well that you can connect with. You have pitch competitions where investors go to, etc. Now, the reality is that, and again, think of everything that I say is from our experience, and from, I can say 90% of the cases. There's always a 10% chance that, yes, you might find an investor that could be, for example, a Chilean, a successful entrepreneur that is living in Miami, that has $50 million in the bank, and that he likes you as a founder and says like, oh, you know what, I like this guy and I'm going to invest in him, even though he hasn't even come to the US. He hasn't proven that his business model will work in the US. So what I mean by this is that before an investor, a US investor, will put the US dollars in your company, think that he has 100 other options to do that, right? And those 100 options are usually companies that are in the US, that already know the market, that have proven maybe that they have a model that works, that have also, maybe they have clients that are paying, and maybe they're growing. So why would the investor, invest in somebody that doesn't know the market, that is brand new, that is trying to expand, that has not proven that they have a client or that they're growing? They have their choices, and sometimes that's what, the superhero story that we tell is like, yeah, maybe you think, well, but I can convince them because I'm great and I have all this charisma and I have this product and it's amazing. But the reality is that the investor says like, I love you as a guy and I love what you're doing in Chile and maybe in Latin America, but first come here, prove me that it will work in the US, prove me that you have paying clients, prove me that you're growing, and then I'll give you my money for you to keep growing. That's the reality, and I would say 90% of the cases, which doesn't mean that, yeah, you might have that odd chance of finding somebody that falls in love with you as an entrepreneur and says, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to give you the money. But it's really, I wouldn't bet on that. Thanks, Martin. Anybody else? Questions? Do you want to say anything? Yeah, we didn't mention that we were recording. Actually, maybe that's rude. And if we can send it to you, I think that, yeah, that's, I don't know, ProChile, I don't know if we can.
Yes, what we are going to do is after this webinar, we are going to upload the recording to a platform. So it's going to be available for all the participants. Excellent. We can also send the link to the recording to all the participants.
Yeah. Okay, so there, Rodrigo Diaz is from One Marketer. Thank you for me. We're a SaaS startup for social customer care in 15 countries. Okay, great. So there's no question there, but congrats on your progress, and you were selected by Velocity Texas for soft landing. Awesome. So, well, Miami's well, of course we live there, and we have some of our partners here. Actually, Julia is here in the chat. She's from CIC. That is one of our partners that we work with very closely. And there's a very nice ecosystem in Miami that has been evolving in the past, I would say, 7 years. And today I see it as a place where you can really kind of separate yourself from the rest. And why? Because if you have a really good product or service and you are a good entrepreneur, let's say, you will be noticed, because it's still a nascent ecosystem. It's not as developed maybe as the Austin or San Francisco or New York or other markets. So that's why there's more, let's say, there's more support and there's more hunger for successful startups to grow in Miami. So you'll get essentially time from people that will pay you more attention than in other more developed ecosystems. So would love to talk to you, Rodrigo, about that if you want, about the soft landing in Miami. Okay. Who else?
Charlie, I have one last question. So if you will have to choose one thing not to do, there's many things they shouldn't do in order to take the US market, but what is the main error Latin American scale-ups do when trying to enter the US market?
It's tough because there's 7, but I think that the main one is really not taking enough, let's say, not taking seriously enough the importance of strategy and planning before starting executing. And you know, the tendency of every entrepreneur, and I am an entrepreneur, like I had my startup, and it's like, I'm just gonna go out and sell, you know, and I don't care about all this market. I'll just go and I'll sit down in a co-working space somewhere and I'll start calling prospects, and my product is so great that I'm gonna kill it. And it happened like that that passion, I would say, or I don't know how to say that strength that entrepreneurs have sometimes takes over the brain, and that's a big issue because it's super expensive to do that in the US. It's not, you know, every day that you spend in the US, you're investing dollars and you're paying in the US currency, of course. You have to think about rent, about your food, and things that when you're home and you're planning, you're not spending. So I think that the main mistake is that it's not taking the right time to really what we talked about. It's studying the market, it's talking, it's learning about the ecosystem, it's understanding how each one of the players fit in that ecosystem, and it's building, you know, the processes so that you can move to the next stage with a more solid foundation than just go out and try to sell without any kind of real strong strategy behind.